The White House is expanding efforts to surveil and intercept Iranian weapons being smuggled to Yemen, where Houthis have staged a deadly campaign of violence against commercial shipping that has proved resilient to 2 months of military attacks by American forces. The initiative seeks to map seafaring routes used by Iran and stop the arms shipments while in transit, an acknowledgement that the Houthis are likely to pose a security challenge for the foreseeable future. It is part of a broader strategy that also includes sanctions and diplomatic pressure, but it faces constraint as essential military resources are in short supply. A senior defense official characterized the effort as very vigorous, saying White House also is exploring how partner nations can expand their focus on disrupting Tehran's arms smuggling to help offset a limited inventory of American drones and other surveillance equipments that are central to the process. It's definitely a challenge in an area as large as the one we are describing to identify all of these craft, but we are devoting significant resources to identifying, tracking, and where we have the ability, interdicting, and what we are finding is significant. When Houthis seized Yemen's capital, Sana'a, in 2014, they inherited an array of weaponry, including North Korean and Soviet-era Scud missiles, Soviet-era surface-to-air missiles, and Chinese anti-ship missiles, said Mohammed El-Basha, a senior Middle East analyst at the Navanti Group. Since then, the group has learned to create more advanced weapons by modifying items in its arsenal and using technology obtained from overseas, including from Tehran. Since November, shortly after the Hamas assault on Israel, the Defense Department has documented at least 105 attacks on merchant vessels off Yemen. The weapons used include one-way attack drones, rockets, ballistic missiles, and explosive-laden drones that can skim the waves and travel underwater. America-led effort to protect maritime traffic has successfully thwarted many of those attacks. On March 6, however, an anti-ship missile launched by the Houthis struck a commercial vessel, the MV True Confidence, in the Gulf of Aden. At least 3 mariners were killed and several more were injured, U.S. officials said. Last month, a Houthi missile strike on the MV Rubimar, an American-owned cargo ship, caused the vessel to sink, while the United States conducted a campaign against al-Qaeda militants in Yemen for more than a decade. It devoted limited attention to the Houthis, who despite their anti-American rhetoric were more focused on countering an air campaign by Saudi Arabia than attacking American or Western interests. As a consequence, the Pentagon today has a somewhat narrow understanding of the group's smuggling operations. Maritime smuggling has originated from Iranian ports such as Jask in the Gulf of Oman and Bandar Abbas in the Strait of Hormuz. According to Uni experts, such shipments can be transported through the Arabian Sea and the Gulf of Aden all the way to Yemen, or take routes over land through bordering countries such as Oman. At least 18 maritime interdictions have occurred since 2013, revealing shipments of weapons alleged to have come from Tehran, ranging from machine guns to anti-tank missiles, said El-Basha. Additional smuggling has occurred via the Horn of Africa. It is unknown how much assets has gotten through undetected, making it difficult for the United States to assess the effectiveness of its recent strikes. There have been dozens dating to January in degrading the Houthis' ability to continue their maritime attacks. A persistent challenge facing the Americans is the finite number of drones and other surveillance assets, which are in high demand by American military leaders across the world. The Pentagon, as part of a shifting global security strategy intended to focus foremost on China, in recent years reassigned some of that equipment that had been in South Central Asia and the Middle East over 2 decades of war in Afghanistan and Iraq. General Michael Eric Kurilla, who is head of U.S. Central Command, oversees American military activity throughout the Middle East, told the Senate Armed Services Committee this month that, for a time, he diverted surveillance capabilities from over Afghanistan, where the United States continues to monitor terrorist groups, to focus instead on the Red Sea, as well as Iraq and Syria, where, until recently, deployed U.S. forces faced repeated attacks from groups aided by Iran. The Houthis have shot down at least 2 MQ-9 Reaper drones off the coast of Yemen, once in November and again in February, U.S. officials said. Another limitation is the availability of enough trained personnel to carry out the perilous task of boarding vessels suspected of carrying Iranian weapons to Yemen. Although the Pentagon is stepping up its interdiction efforts, the mission is not expected to entail a major allocation of additional special operations forces, which is a major limitation. Presently, officials said, on January 11th, 2 Navy SEALs were lost at sea while attempting to climb aboard a suspected smuggling vessel off Somalia. Others involved, including U.S. Coast Guard members, recovered what CENTCOM said was an array of Iranian-made weapons, including missile components, and took 14 people into custody. 4 of them face charges, including intentionally transporting a warhead, the Justice Department announced in February. A month later, Coast Guard personnel intercepted a vessel in the Arabian Sea and seized ballistic missile components, explosives, and other weapons parts, officials said. The shipment obviously originated in Iran, they said. Carl Sam Mundy III, retired lieutenant general, who oversaw Marine Corps forces in the Middle East from 2018 to 2021, called these missions among the military's most dangerous and unpredictable operations. They can happen with American forces fast roping from helicopters down to the suspected smuggling ship or boarding from the water after swooping in on small, high-speed boats. Many times, we don't know what exactly the threat is, said Mun, a distinguished senior fellow with the Middle East Institute. A lot of times, we don't know. And so, of course, that complicates the operation because you're putting people in a vulnerable situation and adding in all these atmospheric conditions that make it all very challenging. Boarding can be carried out by SEALs, Force Reconnaissance Marines, Coast Guard maritime security response teams, and other elite forces. Gathering intelligence and making sense of it are required to make such missions successful, and that takes time, which is a significant factor, he said, especially in an area as vast as the Red Sea and nearby waterways. The problem is, it's a big geographic area, and we don't have enough resources to do this, Mundy said. To do this right, it's going to take time. Kenneth Frank McKenzie, a retired Marine Corps general who led CENTCOM from 2019 to 2022, said cutting off the flow of lethal arms from Iran to the Houthis is critical and extremely challenging.